Texas extends Steve Sarkisian? Is that the right move? Yeah, I think it's absolutely the right move. He is now a very wealthy man. I think he was before, but he is going to be for the foreseeable future. Chris Gordy, Locked On SEC, is here. Why? Because Texas is in the SEC with teams like Alabama and Georgia and Florida and Tennessee, and Texas is in there. I think this is the right move for two reasons. Number one, not that Sarkisian would have been shopping his name around. He's got everything he needs to win at Texas. You got money, you got brand, you got recruiting, you got everything that you need there as the head coach of the Longhorns. But you solidify your commitment to a guy that has shown he is at his best as a coach in his career as the head man for the University of Texas. And going into the SEC, it's not a conference where you can afford to have any instability, any frustration, any discontent on the coaching side of things. I think this is a stable long-term investment and one that I think will continue to pay off for the Longhorns.
Yeah, it's one that needed to happen. Let's be real. Alabama did call Sark when they were calling around. They called Dan Lanning. They called Mike Norvell. They called Sark. And, just they didn't offer him the job, but it was preliminary. Hey, would you be interested? And I think Sark a year ago would have been, I think a Sark coming off a year where he made the playoff and has a lot of pieces coming back, including his quarterback, Quinn Ewers, looked at it and kind of said, hey, Texas, you going to take care of me? And Chris Del Conte said, we'll take care of you. So it was kind of this like mutual thing, like, hey, perfect timing for Nick Saban to retire, because I kind of use that and give flirty eyes at Alabama and go, hey, I might leave. But no, it's good timing, especially with Texas coming to the SEC. I actually thought it was funny because I was talking to a friend about this a few months ago when we were looking at Sark's salary. I was like, holy crap, like he's one of the more underpaid coaches in college football. And if you think about it, he's a guy that obviously had tried his hand, at the NFL and, kind of had his redemption towards the OC at Alabama under Saban and was running good offenses and kind of had his pick of the litter. Like he could have waited for the next big job to come along, but Texas opened up at the right time. They moved on from Tom Herman and brought him in. But it was also a little hesitancy on Texas. Like, hey, it's a big name, but what if this doesn't work? We need to have an out here. And so I think that's why he was only making just over $5 million last year. This doubles him. He's now up to $10 million, and this puts him in the category with the likes of the Ryan Days and that sort of thing. And especially in the SEC, Kirby Smart's the highest paid. Nick Saban he retired, but you got Brian Kelly just a hair under 10 million, kind of puts him right in on par with those other coaches.
There are only 8 college football coaches making $10 million or more in annual salary. Sarkisian's exact number for this upcoming season will be $10.3 million, and 24/7 Sports has a layout of the highest paid coaches in college football. But it's not a coincidence that 2 of the guys on this list are coaches that you mentioned as being tied to the Alabama job, where at least a phone call was made. Mike Norvell at Florida State, big time raise. And the Seminoles, as I talked about earlier, are trying to get out of the ACC, but they're going to have their head coach no matter where they go. You've got Kirby Smart in there. Brian Kelly is at $9.9 million. Why don't we just call it 10 and say that that's good enough and such. But Sarkisian's contract makes him one of the highest paid coaches in all of college football. And going into the SEC, yeah, the Alabama job could have been appealing. There wasn't another clear target there, but certainly Alabama was going to be that job. DeBoer is also making about $10 million a year with the Crimson Tide in his first year. I think this shows a level of respect to Steve Sarkisian for the job that he has done, because Texas is a great job. You've got money, you've got resources, you've got a recruiting base, you've got a brand, you've got passion, you've got support, you've got what you need there. But something that separates it from the other high-profile jobs in college football is you've got pressure. You have got a desire, a need. You've got a need to win in Austin, Texas. That's the sense that I get as someone who, granted, does not live in Austin, but that's the feeling around that program, is they need to win, and they feel Sark is that sort of guy. He looks to be that sort of guy. And the past 2 coaching hires, the past 3 really haven't worked out as well for Texas, and the need hasn't been there. They haven't delivered a season like the one that Steve Sarkisian just did at Texas. And I think as they go into the SEC, they feel like he's a guy who senses, okay, we want to win national championships here. That's the standard. And Sark, as the head coach, the play caller, a good recruiter, can get them to that sort of level.
Well, the reality too is okay. Maybe the win totals haven't been all that great since he's been there, right? I mean, this past year was his first big year breaking through. He was 5-7, and then 8-5, and then this year they get to double-digit wins and make the playoff. The only thing that's a little concerning with it is their two losses last year: the neutral field against Oklahoma, and of course the Sugar Bowl to Washington. They were favored in both of those. I mean, Texas was. They were considered a team that could go undefeated last year and win the whole thing. So they fell short a little bit, but I think what's interesting, and it's funny you were running through some of the big name coaches, and it got me thinking like Saban was the highest at 11 million. Don't forget Mel Tucker was in that 10 million a year category at Michigan State before that debacle happened. But
yeah,
to me, the bigger story is look at the other coaches in the SEC, the next tier. And this is where I put Josh Heupel, Mark Stoops, Lane Kiffin. They're all in the 9 million a year range. So like, that's what, like, do you really, if you're Texas, you really want to be paying your guy 5 million and these other dudes in the SEC going 7-5 and, 6-6 are making almost double what you're making. So it was incumbent on Texas. And look, there's no shortage of money in Austin. They got all the money in the world. So it was incumbent on them to give Sark that raise, keep him happy. And the other thing is too, I talk about the win totals. Yeah, it wasn't great the first 2 years, but look at what he's done in recruiting the last 3 years. That's where he's, buttering his toast. It's been top 10 recruiting classes each of the last couple of years. Got the biggest recruit in recent history in Arch Manning, who's waiting in the wings behind Quinn Ewers. So you're paying Sark for that. Keep recruiting at an all-time level, and then keep, getting this win total increase. And let's make some more noise in the playoff and possibly win a championship. And if he does that, he'll be at Texas for a long time.
And this has been a really well-timed situation, I think, for Texas because Alabama, inquired about Steve Sarkisian. I don't know that the talks ever got really any serious, or I can't even confirm personally if Steve Sarkisian picked up the phone. I imagine that he did, but something that he had to consider and might have changed the landscape if things were different is that Quinn Ewers decided to come back. Didn't go to the NFL draft, said, no, I'm coming back. I want to go win a national championship here, compete at that sort of level, and they're capable of doing so. They've had a great transfer portal this offseason. I like what they have done on the offensive side of the ball. Certainly defense with Sark teams is always going to be the biggest question. They couldn't get stops early in that game. They struggled in the secondary against Washington in the Sugar Bowl semifinal game. But this timing just worked out because Ewers was coming back. Imagine if Quinn Ewers was departing. Imagine a world in which Arch Manning said, no, I don't want to wait any longer. Would Steve Sarkisian still have said Texas is the spot? I think part of the reason that he has decided Austin is the place he wants to establish himself as being worthy of that $10 million plus a year as a head coach in college football is he knows I got to strike while the iron is hot. I've got a veteran Heisman caliber quarterback in Quinn Ewers. Alabama is undergoing a transition with their first year head coach. This is going to be as open of a season as we can remember in college football, just because Alabama isn't going to be an obstacle for everyone to go through the way they always are, at least in the first year with Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah, the interesting part with Texas, and you're right, I mean, having Quinn Ewers back is huge, but the biggest thing with Quinn is he's missed games each of the last 2 seasons. So, Arch Manning's going to have to be ready to go because there's going to likely be, I'd say he's going to have to step in and play in a game or maybe even start a game this year. So it's incumbent that they get him ready throughout spring ball and summer ball, that he's ready to go for the fall because Quinn Ewers has missed time. But they lose a lot on that defense. I mean, when you talk about guys like Tavondre Sweat, Jalen Ford, and Byron Murphy, these are all dudes who are going to hear their names called very early in the NFL draft this year. And that's a lot of production, but not just production, leadership. So, yes, you got Quinn Ewers, but who are the other leaders? I mean, you lose almost all your wide receivers in Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, Jordan Whittington, J.T. Sanders, the tight ends. So it's just a lot of production they lose. And then keep in mind, you're going to the SEC. And, oh, by the way, you have a non-conference game where you go to Michigan in week 2, the reigning national champs. I know they lose a lot, but that still is a tough place to play. So you look at a home game against Georgia, you get the neutral game against Oklahoma, a road trip at A&M that the Aggies are going to treat like their freaking Super Bowl. I don't care what A&M's record is on that game. They're going to go all out to try to win that game. So when I saw the Vegas win total was at 10.5, I just started leaning and going, you know what, Spencer? I think 10-2. I think there's 2 losses there. Now, 10-2 in the SEC.
That's a playoff team.
It gets you in the playoff, but I just think, man, this team's not going to go 11-1 or 12-0. I just think it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment going from playing the likes of Baylor and Kansas to having to play the Georgias and the A&Ms.
Chris Gordy, Locked On SEC. Great stuff today. Chris, thanks so much for coming on the show.
All right. Thanks, Spencer.
Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.